Welcome back, Conscious Investor. I am always thrilled as ever to have Mark England on Conscious Investor podcast today. This is someone who has influenced so many people in my life in a very powerful and positive way, and actually has a ripple effect into my son's life because my son works with a coach who has gone through the Enlifted coaching process. Mark and I talk about that for just a brief moment, but I want you to know, Conscious Investor, I have been listening to feedback from you and I am so grateful. And so as you've noticed with some of these episodes, I've been putting out these introductions like, hey, here are the key points. And I'm doing that specifically because I've been listening to what makes the podcast great for you. What's the best listening experience for you? So I'm going to apologize that I know that in the podcast episode in general, I have a tendency to have that fun banter. And I want you to know that the change is coming. I have already been recording episodes where we're diving straight into it. But we've got about 4 more episodes before you get to hear the new format of the show. This introduction is a prelude to that new format of the show. And I'm going to give you some highlights of what Mark and I talk about, and then we'll dive into the show. But I just want to let you know that, yeah, there are changes taking place behind the scenes. And unfortunately, they do take time because podcast episodes are recorded months in advance typically. And so you don't always get to see your input as I gave the input and it happened on the next episode. It does take a little bit of time just by nature of podcast episodes being recorded. So I want to say thank you for your feedback. I requested your feedback on a social channel, and I really appreciated it because my goal is to serve you and to serve you powerfully. And so your feedback is always welcome. You can always shoot me an email at julie@julieholly.com and to let me know, hey, if you did this tweak on your show, I think it'd be really awesome. I will absolutely take that into consideration. So some of the things that Mark and I talk about is, right, he's a founder. He has been coaching before coaching was a thing. I mean, he's one of the OG in the coaching, and when you see him, if you're watching on YouTube, you're like, how are you even old enough to be part of the OG of the whole coaching space? But yeah, he's been coaching since the early 2000s. And one of the primary things that we discuss is the victim mentality. And Mark is very clear. Victim mentality is one of the most addictive drugs that are out there in the world. We dive into this conversation about how most people don't even realize that they are operating with a victim mentality. So what do? Well, he takes us down the path of how do we dismantle that victim mentality and how do we unlock that next level life? I have full confidence that you are going to gain and grow tremendously from this conversation. And you're going to notice that I'm actually very quiet throughout this conversation because Mark is just like, he is on fire, on point, just delivering so much value to you. When you're done listening to the episode, I would love it if you left an honest rating or review. Just let us know, hey, did this serve you? And if so, if you want to leave a written review, just scroll all the way down to the bottom and you can let us know that, man, this one takeaway made me think in a different way. It means the world to myself, to my guests. And guess what? That's how the podcast ends up reaching far more people. So you get to play a role in casting a ripple effect in other people's lives. I appreciate you so much more than you probably realize, Conscious Investor. Thank you for listening. And now let's dive in. Great to be back with you, Conscious Investor. I am absolutely thrilled. You know that I have the best people in my life. And one of the exciting things about having extraordinary people in your life is that they connect you with other extraordinary people. And today I am joined by Mark England. And this is a name that I have heard for years now. And I've listened to him on my friend's podcast, and I've heard him, I've looked at his work and dabble. he's not new to me. And yet this is the first time he's on the show. So I want to give a super shout out right now, first and foremost, to my good friend, Austin Linney. If you haven't checked out his podcast, you want to make sure you go and check out his show, because he is the reason that The Conscious Investor got the name The Conscious Investor. And he's also my first introduction to who is Mark England, because he was going through Mark's coaching program. And additionally, he and my good friend, Dennis Meralda from the Building Men podcast, who has also been on the show, they're really good friends. And so I'm so grateful to have strong people in my life. I'm so grateful for the introductions that they provide, because today Mark and I are going to talk about things you struggle with. Remember, we're talking on this show about health, mindset, and wealth. And too often we take these things for granted and we define mindset however we want to define it. And so it's arbitrary. And so we really don't know what we're after. And so often we're self-sabotaging our lives by the way we're speaking to ourselves and the way we are viewing the world around us. So Mark is just a genius at these topics. I like that word genius. It's super fun. And he has been coaching since the early 2000s. And that just kind of comes about by chance. We'll get into all of this, but I know by the end of this episode that you are going to feel challenged, inspired, and curious in the most beneficial way. And that's the best way to live life, because life should be playful. It should be fun. And we should be doing really cool things. Mark, so thrilled to share space with you.
Hi, Julie Holly. Likewise. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Austin.
Yeah, super shout out. Amazing people. Hey, you just had a super extraordinary event. Dennis was talking about how excited he was because he was going to be speaking at your event. And I was just listening to some things about it recently on a podcast, the residual after effects. So anyway, how was the event? Tell us how this came about and what was the purpose of your event?
Well, first things first, we're not an events company, and we love our coaches, and so once a year we create an event, an experience, an Enlifted experience. We called this first one, and interestingly enough, we had a team meeting this morning about which one we're doing in 2024 or where we're taking it. And Austin, Texas was on the top of the list. Call them takeovers, Enlifted takeovers. So I am now, granted, I'm partial because I'm from Virginia, Richmond, born and raised, and it's a lovely city, phenomenal city. It's so under the radar. And we had our Enlifted takeover in early October in Richmond. We had about 80 Enlifted coaches come out. And I mentioned this to some people in Richmond, the two venues that we rented, the Bird Theater, which is the oldest running movie theater in the United States. Okay. Hey. And then Dogwood Dell, which is this gorgeous amphitheater. So I grew up going to these places, and now we're renting them out and running Enlifted game there. Yeah, we had a lot of fun, which is par for the course. I mean, why does transformation get this over serious rap? It's got to be serious and hard and arduous all the time, or it's just this ultra foo-foo, somebody with a flat brimmed hat or a grandma with another crystal book in Sedona going, why do they always hold their heart and lean to the side and exhale like that? No. How about let's just be real people and get into our stories and look at our words, use better words and better breath. We can stop the podcast right there. 95% of people's problems comes down to how the word they're using and how they're breathing. And if you use better words and you breathe better in the context of using your words to dismantle the victim mentality and stay focused on what's important to you and build yourself up in your imagination and unlock your breath, which turns you into a great listener, which is half of what most people would call, or at least attribute, success to in their life. Show me your favorite people that are bad listeners. Does anyone say that? No, it's always the exact opposite,
right?
Yes. No. So
right.
we got 80 Enlifted coaches in Richmond. Very cool city, very cool venues. And the thing happened naturally. We had a great time. It was, to use a simple word accurately, it was special.
Yep.
It was special. And I've been doing this coaching thing full time for the past 16 years, as far as just mindset coaching. That's it. And I'm at around 750 workshops delivered. We did a TEDx talk. I was on a show that was about 2 million people watching live. That was earlier in the month. And so I can do spotlight. That's fine. It's cool. What's even more exciting, and we're still talking about Dennis. What's more exciting is helping other people get on stage and deliver and tell a good story. And most importantly, enjoy being up there. That's the promised land for speakers, is because most people would pay not to do it. And then out of the people that say yes to it, most are praying for a sliver of confidence. Okay, cool. Yes, please. And if you keep going, if you prepare well like a professional, you can get into the realm of comfort. And when you're comfortable up there, that means you're having a good time. You're enjoying being seen. It puts the audience in the perfect place to take in what your talk is about. And so, yeah, we had five of our. We got 55. We could have picked 55 people. We picked 5 hammers in our coaching community that are just doing the damn thing. Dennis was one of them. And yeah, so he and myself and, I worked with all 5 of the coaches that we picked to present at the Bird Theater. He's got some great B-roll from that. And we prepared for 2.5 months. Yep. 2.5 months for an 11-minute TEDx style talk. And yeah, he crushed it. He went out and he rapped. That's how he introduced himself. He had some fly shoes on, and
oh my god,
he liked it.
Of course, he
enjoyed it. Yeah, so the event was fun, and he knocked it out of the park.
I love this. You used a word, special.
Mm-hmm.
It was really it was special. I added all the reallys. You said it was special.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other synonyms? Like, how else would you describe it? What made it special, or what does that word special mean to you?
What does it feel like when you roll up into a party of all your favorite people? What does it feel like? I'm plugging my computer in. What does that feel like? Describe the energy.
Deep sense of connection, belonging, excitement, joy, peace. Even though it's exciting, it's also very peaceful to know, like, what? I have all these amazing people in my life. Like, overwhelm.
Those are adjectives that perfectly and accurately describe that event, because the Enlifted community, it's a very unique group of self-selected people. So most people would pay not to go into their stories, especially of ouch and pain and sting and woe, and pick up that heavy ass pen and write it down and air them out and change some words and go and deal with the addiction, their addiction to the victim mentality, because that's a very real part of the conversation. Crack cocaine's got nothing on the victim mentality. That's the most addictive thing out there. It's the most overly horribly abused drug, because it is, to be absolved of all responsibility for what we create in our life. It's quite convenient, terrifying at the finish line. Those deathbed regrets, that's some real shit right there. Yeah. And so, most people would, these are, and we've certified 390 level 1 coaches so far, and they've all gone through. Level 1's no joke. It's got teeth. It's hard. That first month is tough. That pen is very heavy. And part of them just screams, no, don't write that down. Definitely don't say it. Please don't feel these feelings. But they do, because they're like, listen, I need to get over this thing.
Yeah.
There's some part of me that's in the way of me being the way I want to be. And I need to figure out what it is. And okay, fine. Yes, I will write out the stories. And so these are self-selected, like I said, people that have turned the volume down on the stuck and suck in their head. And also, and there's a direct correlation to, when someone does a good piece of work, dismantling the victim mentality. Their breath unlocks. And when you get around a room, you get in a room of people that are comfortable with themselves and breathing well, it creates that warm, fuzzy feeling, and everybody's listening and the conversations are flowing. And it's the thing that there's no vitamins that'll ever, like supplements that'll ever come close to doing what that does for, us on a mind, body, spirit level. Yeah. And we've been doing this long enough to where a lot of coaches, they've just got teams within the team that they just, hang out with, or they went through level 1 or level 2 with, or,
That's
so it's fun to watch.
That's a very deeply bonding experience. And I like the idea also of warmth, like when you're around people who are truly comfortable with themselves, which to me is always a breath of fresh air. I'm like, come on, y'all,
exactly right.
Just peel back the masks. And so I feel like since I'm in North Idaho and it's winter, I feel like it's the warm fireplace. It just creates that actual warmth that's what a home is all about, where it just feels like there's this radiating, glowing energy. And because people are glowing, they're like, I'm going to interject. And we got to get back into victim mentality, but I think that you might appreciate this analogy. My husband and I got back from a mastermind, and he said, he came, I was invited, and he decided, he's like, I'd like to go. I said, you're not going to New Orleans as a tourist. The energy has to be protected in this space. So like, if you'd like to come, you have to come as a willing participant, actively engaged in all of that. He signed up. He's like, cool, I'm there. When we're driving back home from the airport at like middle of the night, he's like, how do you do it? Like, you just ask all these questions and you're just so there, and it's so you just seem so comfortable. And I said, I only have one filter. Said, think about a coffee maker, a little, drip coffee maker. And most people are walking around with this Costco sized stack of filters that they're trying to like let the water drip through to make coffee. And it's never going to happen. And I said, you're trying to filter all these different things out. Like, forget about it. Just pull the stack out. Just be you. Have one filter. I think it is. I need a filter. It's not that I don't need it. It's probably better for the world. And, it's like, it's just healthy, like self-awareness. That would be what that filter would be in my mind, is like just a level of self-awareness, and let everything just enjoy. Like, and when you're around
enjoy
people like
and breathe
that,
well. Watch what happens. Yeah. Imagine that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay. So I love that you had this event. I have an event also, and that's exactly how I felt last year going into this next event. I'm already feeling that way. I'm just so excited to just be around other conscious investors. It's amazing. I don't want to run out of time. I have to ask you about the victim mentality, because I think so many people are walking around and they haven't even self-diagnosed. They are walking around with zero level of awareness that they're walking around with this toxicity, and they don't even know it's present in their body. They're eating all organic, grass-fed, impossible, whatever.
Not impossible meat.
No, exactly. It's like,
no,
don't get me started.
No, Bill.
But
you eat the bugs, Bill. You eat the bugs, Klaus.
Not me. I like my meat. So they go through all these precautions, like get all their diet, their exercise, their meditation, blah, blah, blah. And yet they're walking around with this toxicity that they haven't even they're unaware of. So how does somebody even become aware of, oh my gosh, I'm walking around with this victim mindset?
You ask most people, how are you feeling? Fine. It's like when someone says that, they're not fine.
Right.
First things first, fine is a grain of sandpaper. Okay. And it's like, hey, how's it going? Oh, living the dream. That means I'm about to shoot myself in the head. Right. And so here's it's like the standard American diet. If someone eats the standard American diet, expect inflammation. If someone is using English, the English language, in the way that it's used almost exclusively, which is externalized, vague, and inflammatory, they should expect some psychological and emotional inflammation. And some of the symptoms of that The main symptom of that is breath trapped in the chest. We're known as the language people. That's nice. It's nice to be known for anything. And we might as well be known as the language and the breathing people because we talk about it so much. And push comes to shove, it's about the breath. I love me some squiggles and sounds and stories and words. And at the end of the day, I'm here to help people unlock their breathing. So after 10 years so like I said, I've been doing this work somewhere between full-time and overtime the whole time for the past 16 years. And we're going towards the definition of the victim mentality, everybody. And if you can, not if you're driving, grab a pen and a piece of paper, because you want to put yourself in that exclusive club of people that have written down the definition of the victim mentality. Most people have never heard it. The conversation gets as far as, they're playing a victim or they have a victim mindset. And then what do you do from there? It's like, you've got inflammation in your body, and that knowing that is supposed to help me fix it. That's not how it goes. We need to get into the mechanics. We need to get into the how. And if the conversation is done well and taken far enough, then we get down to where the rubber meets the road in mindset, which is the words. This is where the conversation of mindset is going. I'm watching it and I'm helping it happen. So on a side note, what is mindset? It gets talked about a lot, right? You, myself, anybody listening, you can ask the Google. What's the definition of mindset? And you're going to get 17 definitions on the first page alone. And half of those definitions, it looks to me. Now, granted, you got to know who you're listening to here, everybody. I'm a former elementary school PE teacher with a handful of MMA fights. Like I'm not cracking nuclear fission. I'm not going to solve world hunger. I'm a very simple man. And half of the definitions on the first page, it's like somebody said, hey, come up with a definition of mindset and make it really complicated so it's hard to understand. And so people will think we're smart and we know what we're talking about. No, most of the time, if someone even has a definition of mindset, and these are people that talk about mindset a lot, it's this big picture, clunky, philosophical thing that takes a while to explain. Good rule of thumb. If it takes a while to explain it, you don't understand it. Okay.
Oh, that's so true.
And then good luck implementing it. Okay. So in Lifted, we have a definition of mindset. And in my personal professional opinion, it's the best in the game. Mindset, everybody. What is it? Glad you asked. It's the story you tell yourself. That's what your mindset is.
We're done.
Yeah.
Done. Oh my gosh. I love it.
That's what your mindset is. Yeah. Your mindset is the story that you tell yourself to yourself. Your mindset is the story you tell yourself about yourself. Your mindset is the story that you tell yourself about what you can do and what you can't do, and what is possible and what isn't possible, and what you do deserve and what you don't deserve. And a vast majority of that is just opinions. Opinions. Nothing ever works out for me is not on the periodic table of elements. Okay. Everybody's out to get me is not a unit of measurement. Okay. They're actually spells, if you want to get all abracadabra about it. So the definition of a spell, Webster's, not mine, is a word or a combination of words of great influence. And no one will ever really love me is a spell. It's a combination of words that greatly influences me. Or I've got a tremendous amount of support is also a combination of words that greatly influences. One constricts, one expands. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that we're spelling, by definition, on ourselves all day long, for better and for worse. And most people's language is working against them. Most people's language is working against them, unbeknownst to them. And it's an education issue. So I have a degree in education. And I didn't have one course, class, or conversation coming up in the public school system or getting a degree in how to enforce it about how my language influences my imagination, or about how my language influences my breathing, or how my language can create excess rigidity in my body and dense, heavy energy. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to share these sounds out of my face with other people and bring them into my story for better and for worse. Because the victim mentality, it's like the worst multi-level marketing program out there ever. It wants all your friends, it wants all your family, and it's a bottomless pit. So back to how can someone know if they have some of the victim mentality or a lot? It's to be expected. It's to be expected based on how we have inherited the English language in the form that most people have inherited in. Also known because language is an inheritance. Where did this stuff come from? It came from the people behind us. These sounds, these squiggles, words, write them down. They're squiggles out of my face, sounds in my head, sounds. Okay, again, Dr. Rocket Science over here, and how most people use their language. It's in a very inflammatory and unconscious way, and most people are very underwritten. And I'm not talking about insurance. I'm saying they don't write anything, and so the words in their head just swirl. Okay, and they go with the first thing that shows up. Yeah, I'll go with the first thing that shows up in my head about the thing, and I'm sure I got it right the first time. Most people think that the voice in their head is the voice of God. It's not God, trust me. Okay, it might be the exact opposite of that, depending. But yeah, so after, one of the best ways to know if someone is scripting and enacting and maintaining a victim mentality is how loose is your body? How relaxed is your body? How are you feeling energetically? What is your baseline emotional status? And a lot is, how are you breathing? Most people breathe horribly. Most people's breath is trapped in their chest because their language is working against them. Oh yeah, just like that. And I spent 10 years doing this work in a variety of different yoga communities. And the same thing happened every time. We would trust me, they're very interested in breathing well. We would get the scary words, the scary stories and the scary words out of their head, because that's where most people keep the scary stories. The scary stories of the divorce that happened when they were 7, or, dad punching mom, or the merciless bullying they got in middle school, or the incredibly embarrassing business failure that every time they think about it tightens them up. Those stories are very rarely ever written down and dispelled, or because dispel means to cast out. And the fastest way to break a spell is to pick up a pen and write it down, regardless of how much it hurts. Because anyway, so the definition of the victim mentality, let's get this on the table. So the numbers, everybody, are 30, 50, 80. 30, 50, 80. We remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, 80% of what we teach, share, or explain, all three the same thing. And so most people have never heard the definition of the victim mentality. I'm about to recite it twice, verbatim. First time slow, so everybody can write it down. And then second time, I'm going to speed it up and put some polish on it, which then dovetails quite nicely, if you want me to do it, into a tale of two stories, a tale of two spells. One spell of a constrictive nature, one sentence that a little girl heard when she was 9 years old, 10 years old, and it influenced her all the way up through her adult life and into her marriage. Okay. Yeah. And then also one sentence. So that's a constrictive spell. And then an expansive spell, one thing that a grandfather said to his grandson when he was 10 years old that changed the trajectory of his life. Spoiler alert, there's an F-bomb in that one. So here's the victim mentality slow. Definition of it. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself or zerself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That's slow. Here's fast with some shine. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends, it's a tendency, everybody. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. A person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That second sentence is right between the eyes, right where it belongs. The victim mentality depends, circle that word, everybody, as in it has to have, on a habitual, underline that word, everybody, which accurately implies duration and addiction. Thought process. What's a thought process? Glad you asked. It's how you put your words together. Okay. And attributions. What's an attribution? It's a characteristic. Okay. And the main characteristic, besides the words that we focus on, is breathing. Here's a good rule of thumb. Good luck changing your mind if your breath is trapped in your chest. Good luck. So I'm a coach. I'm speaking to people that, coach or teach or influence or consult. Good luck helping change your clients, helping your clients change their mind if their breath is trapped in their chest. It's not going to happen. The breath is in the chest and you're going to get the social niceties, the head, the nod, the smile. Oh, wow, great things are happening. They're hearing what I'm saying. No, they're not. No, they're not. And it's good to know about that. And so, we're in the level 1 certification is all about learning the foundations of the Enlifted method, the tools in order to help people get their clients unstuck. And when you start scratching the surface of, hey, what's going on? What are you struggling with? Where are you stuck? What do you need some help with? When you start getting into the specifics of those things, it's stories of a constrictive, victim-centric nature that share similar word combinations. And so this might sound weird to say, yeah, we help break the spell of the victim mentality by definition. Rudolf Steiner said it. He said, any force that seeks to constrict or control is by definition Luciferian. Noodle on that one, y'all. And so, and our language, have you ever bought a car and you see that car out and about all over the place?
And my Raz, actually, fun story briefly.
Yeah.
Dennis, our good friend Dennis, he told the story about, he and his daughters, like his daughter, he was trying to teach them about the reticular activating system. And he's like, yeah, they were looking for like a pink Jeep or a pink Del Sol or something like that. Right. And within a matter of days, they see one. Right. It's like this totally random thing. But our Raz is so powerful. I love it. Let's put it onto good things.
Yeah, for sure. And then the question is, how do we do that? How do we put our Raz onto good things? And so what are we talking about, everybody? Reticular activating system. You all have one. Everybody's got one. It's a piece of hardware and also software. It acts like a lens. It acts like a filter, and it has a search function and an edit function. And so most people they've purchased a car at some point in time or thought about it even, or just saw a cool car commercial and had a catchy little jingle. And then you start seeing that car out and about all over the place.
Everywhere.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's technically speaking, it's called inattentional blindness. And the number one study, they wrote a book about it. It's called The Invisible Gorilla. And,
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can go check this out on YouTube, Conscious Investor. Just Google
the original video is still on YouTube. And very, very briefly, the Invisible Gorilla study, 2 social psychologists in the late 90s took 7 students, college students, dressed 3 in white, 3 in black, and put 1 in a gorilla costume. They gave the white team a basketball, the black team a basketball, and they filmed for 1 minute. The white team could only pass it back and forth to them, and the same with the black team. And then they filmed that for a minute, these people moving around and things. And 30 seconds in, the student in the gorilla costume walks into the middle of the frame, looks at the camera, beats his chest, turns and walks out. And then they showed that video to tens of thousands of people. And so they directed their attention. Okay, they place their attention on something with a question. How many times does the white team pass the basketball back and forth? Stage magicians know this trick. So do people that script the news. And right. And then at the end, they asked how many times. The correct answer, it was 15 or 16. And then they go, oh, by the way, did you happen to see the gorilla? And 50% of the people edited it out. And when you watch that video, knowing that there's a gorilla right in the middle of it, you're like, there's no way anyone would miss that. Know that that's the reticular activating system, because when someone, say, purchases a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and they start seeing the Jeep Grand Cherokee all over the place, that's the search function. So it goes and searches for the thing, and then it edits out all the things that are not that. So the blue Oldsmobiles and the red bugs, we don't pick those up because they aren't the droids that we're looking for, right? And so the question is, does the reticular activating system only respond to students in gorilla costumes and Jeep Grand Cherokees or in pink Del Sols? The answer is no. Our language is influencing the lens that we see the world and ourselves through. Here's two quick stories: a tale of two stories, a tale of two spells. One of a constrictive nature, and then one of an expansive nature. And remember the definition of a spell, everybody: a word or a combination of words of great influence. So a client of mine came in, sat down, and she was very self-aware. She goes, my marriage is on the rocks. My husband thinks I'm attractive. I refuse to believe him. It's causing real problems. I know where this thing got started. I just don't know what to do about it. And I go, tell me where it started. And so she's 10, and her family roll up to grandma's house for Christmas, and she gets out of the car and runs into the house, and right at the door is her great aunt. And her great aunt leans down and goes, "Ma, you have a big nose, just like me. I put a spell on you." That little girl stiffened up, ran into the bathroom, and Julie, what do you think the first thing she looked at when she got in there in the mirror was?
Her ears, of course.
Yeah, her ears, of
like
course.
Her nose. Yeah.
Her nose.
Yeah.
Her nose. In her imagination, it was no bigger physically than it was 5 seconds ago, but in her imagination, she's now got a honker, which means what? Which means she's ugly. So the reticular activating system, and the more strongly we emotionalize over a story, the thicker that filter gets, the thicker the lens gets, the stronger the confirmational bias is. There's another smart word, as in it's going to edit out anything that that refutes that. Okay. Everybody's out to get me. If I say everybody's out to get me, and I believe it very strongly, then I'm going to edit out all the people in my life that aren't. And the answer is that's the majority of them. Okay. And I will once say, and this was based on, the backstory, and then we'll get back to the big nose. But she goes, I've had the same relationship with 5 different men. Because the story of when her and her mom came back home when she was 9 and caught her dad in the house cheating, and her mom kicked him out and then told her all through middle school and high school, you can't trust men. You can't trust them. They'll cheat on you. And so she goes into her relationships with expecting this to happen. And self-fulfilling prophecies are very real. You bother somebody enough, and they're going to turn into the demon that you're afraid that they will be. And so anyway, the girl's nose is no bigger than it was, obviously, but in her imagination, she's now ugly. And the reticular activating system goes, oh, okay, cool. Got it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to relentlessly point out all of your other flaws and any of the redeeming qualities, which there were, just edits them out. Not going to even entertain them, won't let you see them. Mm-hmm. It's like a huge bodybuilder, body dysmorphia. It goes in a variety of different directions. These guys that get huge, but they think they're tiny in their imagination. That's half of that's coming from when they got picked on when they were a kid, or a woman who weighs 60 pounds who's like, I'm obese. No, that's just what you were afraid of when you were in middle school bullying. Let's just go back to both. And then there was another guy in 2014 that I gave a presentation for, or presentation at a festival, and he was setting up a booth next to us, and he came up afterwards. The F-bomb's coming, everybody. And he goes, man, that was great. Really liked what you were talking about. He goes, you want to hear a story about that same thing? And I was like, sure. And he goes, man, I think I was like 10, and my grandfather, he took me out in the backyard, and he goes, little Johnny, life's wild. There's going to be some zigs and some zags, and you're going to get some things right and get some things wrong. There's going to be ups and downs and twists and turns. Just always remember to err on the side of being a badass motherfucker. And he goes, I took this big breath in. He goes, like that. And he said, I just got bigger. My energy got bigger. I felt it. And he goes, I looked up. Look at the words. Things are looking up. I looked up and saw myself in my imagination as capable and confident. And he goes, of course, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I go after what I want and I like being me. And then he just turned around and walked away. And I was like, that's called winning. If you like being you, if you go after the stuff you want and like being you, which does circle back quite nicely to the breath, because it's really hard to like being you if your breath is trapped in the chest. It's really hard to feel comfortable in your skin when your breath is trapped in your chest. Get on a sales call, everybody, and hold your breath, and you tell me how much of a pro you sound like. Go out on a date, gentlemen, fellas, and hold your breath and tell me what happens. Tell me how good of a time you're having. Tell me about how the conversation flows, and then what happens after that. And then do the opposite. Give a presentation to your colleagues and breathe well and smile and enjoy being up there and watch what happens. And then go out on a date and breathe well and watch what happens to the conversation. And, it's the breath is the swing vote. And the thing that's trapping people's breath more than anything else, and I'm a huge fan of breath work, huge. Okay. We have a breath work coach in our community, is the words. People's mindset, the story they tell themselves.
Talk about full circle. I'm just sitting here in Conscious Investor. That usually I have so many questions, but I am like, oh my gosh, this is the way you're able to articulate this is so accessible. And like you said, the truth of all things is so simple. Everything foundational in life is so simple, and we try to make it so overly complicated, and it's unnecessary, and it doesn't serve anybody well. And Conscious Investor, I know that everything that Mark is sharing here is a lot of this is a new perspective for you. And I'm excited about that, because we should be challenged and inspired, and we should invoke curiosity in our lives and freedom from all these stories and narratives. I appreciate you so much, Mark. I appreciate, your commitment. Yes. I saw this on the website.
So everybody's like, what do I do? How do I change the story that I tell myself? Glad y'all asked. There's two things. So this is my 378th podcast that I've been on talking about this one subject. And I've been asked from time to time, where do we start? Here's where you start. Okay. There's two things. When it's time to have a fun, important conversation or presentation, or let's say you're showing a prospective client a property, or you're on a sales call, or you're giving a presentation, or you're out on a date, and you want the thing to go well, slow down your rate of speech by 5%. Because 5% is way more than 5%. 5%, slowing your rate of speech down by 5%, that means that you're paying attention to it. And most people are not paying attention to how fast their story goes. And a good rule of thumb, the faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. And when someone when someone slows down just a pinch, and that's all 5% is, then your breath starts to loosen up. And if you want to look, sound, and feel like a professional, then you've got to be breathing well. Because if your breath is trapped in your chest, I don't care how good the offer is, how hot the prospect is, you're going to sound like an amateur. Because that's what amateurs sound like. They're stressed, the breath is trapped, and the thing doesn't flow. So slow down your rate of speech by just a pinch, and then soft talk. I think I might want to get my realtor's license. Maybe I should probably spend more time with my wife.
Oh my gosh, you're grossing me out with all these passive verbs. Might probably all of these. No commitment.
Yeah, right. It's almost like I'm self-sabotaging myself again. Are you picking up on the words, folks? And so how can he talk for 45 minutes about mindset and only share just a handful of words with us? Because trust me, this is enough. We've been doing this thing a long time, and soft talk is the gateway drug to the rest of your language. And if you dedicate, okay, we'll use this metric instead. If you cut your soft talk use, and I promise these words are in your language, if you cut them by 50%, you're going to double your confidence. And you with doubled confidence, that is a very different person. Oh, and by the way, it'll take you 6 months. Oh, and by the way, it's free. So will you read out these words, Julie Holly, please?
I love this. This is a soft talk challenge. And by the way, can I tell them where they can get the challenge?
Of course.
Go to enlifted.com. And then this pops up when you go to the website. You can download the 5-day soft talk challenge. When I write, and editors have given me so much grief over these words. So I'm very aware. Probably, perhaps, feels like, guess, maybe, could, might, possibly, sort of, kind of, potentially, hopefully, try. They don't like that one. One day. I hate that one too. Should, almost like, please extract these words from your vocabulary.
Describe the energy. Is this a video? Is this a conscious?
It is. It's over on YouTube.
Fantastic.
So if you want, so you can check this out on the YouTube channel if you're listening, wherever you're listening. And then if you're on the YouTube channel, you can just scan the QR code that Mark is showing you right now. Join the challenge. Extracting these words from your vocabulary will absolutely change your life.
And she completely is 1,000% right. And this is also something that you can very easily share. So we went on, after 10 years of doing this work in yoga communities, I had no more questions about how much people's words and their stories, that's our mindset, the story we tell ourselves, how much people's mindset is trapping their breath. Words working against, stories working against them, breath trapped in the chest. And in 2016, I reached out to 5 people in the CrossFit space. And I said, who's got the best podcast in CrossFit? And everybody came back and said, Barbell Shrugged. And one person came back and they said, oh, by the way, Mike Bledsoe is aware of you and your work. Would you like an introduction? And I said, damn right, I'd like an introduction. And so,
sure, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I didn't say, yeah, I think so. I said, oh, hell yes. And on January 20th, 2017, I flew from Bangkok, it was Koh Samui, it's an island, the Gulf. I flew from Thailand to Los Angeles to go on a podcast in person. That's called showing up. And when that podcast dropped, we got introduced to the fitness industry by the best mouthpiece in the game at the time. And things changed and will forever be changed. And so anyway, we've got at least 35 CrossFit gym owners in our community and another 50 CrossFit coaches. And so why do I bring that up? Is because they take these words, these soft talk words, they'll write them on a board and leave them up at the gym. And everything starts with awareness. And when people, so we've done a couple of things here at Enlifted. We have demystified the conversation about mindset, which starts with the definition of what it is. It's a story you tell yourself, once again. And then we've also gamified it. We've got a ton of language games. And when you take these words and put them up somewhere and leave them up, then people start, it turns into a game. Oh, take out, hey, you just said perhaps. And most people just auto correct. You give yourself a speech impediment. Get it? Okay. And then And then people because when you add in what words to use less of and why, and what words to use more of and why, now mindset becomes practical, as in I can practice using my words different and better. And just what you mentioned earlier, the complicated thing, the simple versus complicated. It is difficult to get to simple. And once you're there, things are easy. It is easy to get to complicated, and staying at complicated is difficult. Y'all get that?
Totally.
And most people fall into the trap of thinking that the answer to their problems, which are so huge and complicated, that answer must be equally as huge and complicated. And I'm here to say, no, it's not. It's actually a handful of words that's train wreck in your head.
I love this. Mark, we could go on. I feel like we need to have
Let's do another one.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, we have to have another session because there's so much
celebrating wins. We can talk about celebrating wins.
Oh my gosh.
We talked about the problem. We talked mostly about the problem. And then there's a whole, most of the time I go on podcast, like the good ones, twice.
We should do that. That's how I start out every one of my coaching sessions, is like celebrating something. What are you excited about? And it's amazing. I have clients that will say, I knew you're going to ask and it's been a really rough week, but because I knew you're going to ask, I actually thought about it and they came up with all these things. They're like, I didn't even realize. So I have to wrap this up. I'm running late now for a meeting, which is funny. I'm like, oh, whoops, whatever. I'd rather be lost in a moment. And, just this is powerful. And it's so important for you, conscious investor, to internalize these concepts. So make sure, as we wrap up Conscious Investor, I want to encourage you. This is information that should not be kept to ourselves, right? A lot of people throw mindset out there as this whole, hocus pocus, abracadabra type thing. I love how you always use, everyone in your space uses abracadabra. And so it's like, how about you share this podcast episode, because I'm certain that there is something that stood out to you. So share it on your social platforms, share it with a friend, someone that this is going to lift them up or encourage them, and point out what it was that stood out to you. Wow, this really helped me. What do you think? Give them an invitation, because when we shift our thinking, when we raise our level of awareness, then we can make some profound shifts in our lives, and we can show up in the world in an extraordinary way. And what would the world look like if everyone did that? Conscious Investor, you're awesome, and I appreciate you. And cheers to health, mindset, and wealth.